Okay, it's Wednesday, April 16th, 2025, and we have the market close data right here.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly. And welcome, folks. This is actually the 20th edition of FinWell Daily Brief.
20 already. Time flies.
It really does. We're looking at news from various platforms today, and we've got a pretty fascinating financial fact to start us off.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
Get this. As of this year, 2025, India has crossed the 100 million mark for demat accounts.
Wow, 100 million. That's huge.
Isn't it? Think about it. Over 100 million people, individuals now connected to the stock markets. It's a massive shift, really, in how people are engaging with finance.
Absolutely. It's not just a statistic, is it? It signals a much broader participation in India's, equity story, a growing awareness, maybe an appetite for investment.
Definitely. And it sets the stage nicely for today's market moves, I think.
It certainly does. A crucial backdrop.
Okay, so let's get into those numbers. The Nifty 50 closed today at $23,447.00. That's up 118.45 points, so 0.51%.
Decent climb. Solid day for the large cap.
Solid, yeah. But here's where it gets really interesting, especially thinking about all those newer investors, maybe looking broader. The Nifty Midcap 150, it actually did better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it climbed to 19,329.25. That's a gain of 150.75 points, or 0.79%. Stronger than the Nifty 50.
Noticeably stronger, yeah. Almost 0.8%.
And hold on, the small caps, they really took off. The Nifty Small Cap 250 ended at 15,376.90. That's up 138.45 points, almost 0.91%.
Right, so nearly a full percent gain there. That's significant momentum in the small cap space.
It really is. And just for the overall picture, the Nifty Total Market Index, it rose to 12,037.10, up 76 points or 0.64%.
So across the board, buying, really. Broad-based strength.
That's exactly what it looks like. Widespread positive sentiment.
And that stronger showing in mid and small caps is quite telling, isn't it? It suggests investors are perhaps seeing more value or growth potential outside the usual big names.
Could be expectations of maybe domestic recovery helping smaller firms.
That's certainly a possibility. Something for listeners to consider when they're looking at their own allocations, Where's the confidence right now?
Good point. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Bonds and currency. As of yesterday, the 15th, the 10-year GSEC yield was at 6.517%.
6.517, okay.
And the rupee against the U.S. dollar, also as of yesterday, 1 USD equals 85.7513 INR.
85.75.
Right.
These underlying numbers are always important.
They really are. The GSEC yield, that's like the benchmark for government borrowing costs, right? It influences other rates.
Exactly. It ripples through the economy, affects loan rates, corporate borrowing, you name it. And the currency rate, well, that's vital for trade, import costs, export competitiveness. Gives you a sense of the wider financial climate.
Right. Okay, let's dive into some of the big financial and economic news that caught our eye. The RBI seems pretty active on the liquidity front.
Mm-hmm. What have they been up to?
Well, a sizable $400 billion bond purchase announced, and alongside that, a huge $1.5 trillion 43-day repo operation.
$1.5 trillion. Okay, that's a serious injection of funds.
It really is. So what's the thinking there? What does this mean for, the average person or investor?
Well, the RBI is basically making sure the banks have plenty of cash on hand. Think of it like oiling the economy's wheels. If businesses need loans to grow or people need mortgages, the banks need the funds to lend.
Right. Makes sense.
So by buying bonds and doing these repos, the RBI pushes money into the banking system. This can help keep borrowing costs down, encourage lending, and ultimately support economic activity. It's generally seen as positive for the investment environment.
Got it. Supportive measures. And interesting, amidst this, the rupee seems to have held relatively steady.
Yes, that's right. It's been trading in a fairly tight range, around 85.74 to 85.78 against the dollar.
And that stability seems linked to, what? A lack of bad news on tariffs.
Seems like it. A bit of a pause in the U.S. tariff talk. The noise around that has died down a little. It just shows how sensitive currency markets are to global political winds. No new negative triggers, so the rupee gets some breathing space.
It's always that global connection, isn't it? Now, on the flip side, we saw some foreign investors pulling back a bit.
Yeah, that's worth noting. On April 11th specifically, data showed foreign investors took out about $273 million from Indian stocks.
Okay.
And another $82.1 million from bonds. So even though the domestic market feels strong, These outflows suggest some international players might be feeling a bit cautious.
Taking profits, maybe? Or worried about global stuff?
Could be either.
Yeah, but
Maybe reassessing risks, maybe just locking in gains after the recent run-up. It's just a data point, but it reflects a slightly more cautious sentiment from that corner.
okay. And speaking of global factors, what are the big things on the horizon internationally that we should be watching?
Well, definitely the upcoming U.S. retail sales figures. That's a key indicator of, how the American consumer is doing, which impacts everyone.
Right. Big piece of the global puzzle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then there's a speech expected from the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. Markets will be hanging on every word, looking for clues about interest rates and future U.S. monetary policy.
Always a big one. Any shifts there can cause ripples everywhere.
Precisely. Changes in the U.S. outlook often echo globally, including here in India.
Okay, so let's try and weave this all together. Strong domestic markets, especially mid and small caps, RBI, adding liquidity, a stable rupee for now, some foreign caution, and key U.S. data coming up. What's the big picture for our listeners?
I think the main theme is the underlying resilience of the Indian markets right now, seemingly powered by domestic factors.
Like that broad-based buying we saw today.
Exactly. The continued flow into mid and small caps, even with some FII caution, suggests confidence in the broader Indian growth narrative. And the RBI's actions, injecting that liquidity, that's a significant positive tailwind.
Helping keep the credit flowing.
Precisely. Making sure banks have the capacity to lend supports economic activity, which should be good for investors overall.
We can't ignore those potential global headwinds, right? The U.S. stuff.
Absolutely not. You've got potential shifts in U.S. tariff policy, the actual numbers from retail sales, what Powell says. Any of those could inject volatility.
Yeah, it could shake things up.
Definitely. These external factors can swing sentiment pretty quickly. So staying informed on the global front is, well, it's just crucial for navigating things right now.
So bottom line advice for listeners today.
Given this mixed, strong domestic story, potential global wobbles diversification is still key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Spread the risk.
Spread the risk across different assets, different sectors. It helps cushion against shocks in any one area. And, like we said, keep watching both the domestic news and those global developments. Informed decisions are always better.
Makes perfect sense. So, quick recap then. Key takeaways for everyone listening. 1, Indian markets are showing strength. Looks like strong domestic support there.
2, the RBI is actively working to keep liquidity ample in the system, which is supportive.
Right.
And 3, keep an eye on global events, especially out of the U.S., as they can definitely influence market direction.
Exactly. Those are the core things to keep in mind.
Fantastic summary. Well, that does wrap up this 20th edition of FinWell Daily Brief.
Great discussion.
Yeah. And if you found these insights helpful, folks, and want to keep getting this daily pulse on the markets, please do hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out.
We really aim to give you that clear, concise perspective you need.
And hey, for more in-depth chats or questions, connect with the SOS FinWell team over on LinkedIn. We'd love to interact with you there.
Definitely reach out.
All right, and we'll leave you today with a quote from Robert G. Allen. He said,
Oh.
"How many millionaires do you know who have become wealthy by investing in savings accounts? I rest my case."
Food for thought.
Definitely something to mull over as you think about your own financial journey. Thanks so much for tuning in.